What is up, you guys? Blaze over here at Blue Chip Athletic Club podcast, and I'm excited to announce today an old friend of mine coming on the show, David Harman. I'm going to let you do a little bit of a kind of bio, who you are, but David and I were buddies back in high school, and honestly, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if we've chatted a ton even since then. But I'm excited to have you on, kind of learn about where you are now in life, and then a little bit about kind of your health and whatnot. So without further ado, give me a little background story and who you are so that people can hear about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks again for having me here. It's really awesome to be able to catch up, and I love what you're doing on in your space through the Blue Chip Athletic Club. But yeah, a little bit about me. I'm a software developer by trade, so that's what I do in my professional life. Um, my passion right now is astrology and all things esoteric, spiritual. So I really focus that into a self-development lens where I first of all use it on myself. So I'm the guinea pig in all of this. But I love working with people to help them better themselves, to help them find their true path and purpose. And I love collecting the tools that allow me to do that. And so my journey's really been one of mind, body, spirit. And in the past, well, I mean, I guess it's been for most of my life. I've really enjoyed being active and physical, but certainly for the past year and a half, I have really had a large focus on developing my body. And I have a lot more clarity on the foundation that it is. Of course, we live in this world. It's we're not escaping that. We're here for a reason. And we have this vehicle, and do we want to be in a vehicle that is in disrepair, in that's coughing up plumes of exhaust that are just basically, being unhealthy? Or do we want to have a strong, vital vehicle that can allow us to do things that we want and that we feel fulfilled in doing? So, you know, my view is that even if you aren't someone who is focused on sports or athletics or competition, it's still critical to have a healthy and mobile body to be able to experience life in.
Totally. I think it's you hit on kind of like a key piece, I think, of health that a lot of people miss. And it's like that existential health where you're like you have your purpose and you found that thing that kind of helps you to, I will call your passion, and I'm really interested to hear a little bit about the astrology thing that you've kind of leaned into, and why and how and what those tools kind of are. But selfishly, I feel like there's a lot of people that kind of miss the purpose driven reason. People get into health for vanity reasons. I definitely did when I first started moving and working out myself. Who isn't like a 15, 16-year-old kid who wants to get more girls, right?
Yeah,
um
absolutely.
yeah, but at the end of the day, like now it's so funny how the journey has totally shifted, and it shifted into something where it's like, how can I move for as long as possible to be able to have the most fun with people that I love and enjoy, and that same breadth of work of like making sure that I have my purpose of doing the thing too. So I can totally understand where you kind of go with that. And I'd love to have you kind of expand a little bit on like, why did this journey start? And for everybody's knowledge too, like David, when he was in high school, was a pretty quiet dude. And brilliant dude actually as well. I know that, you say you're a software developer, but I don't know if that really gives you the amount of credit that you probably deserve. But I would just love to know, like, how does a software developer get into, the health space? Because I'm sure, like, in your field too, it probably is really, really tough to have that be an outlet because there's probably a lot of people that are just sitting behind the computer all day. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think for me, it's in my blood. Like, yeah, I've always noticed that if I am stagnant for too long of a period, physically stagnant, I'm not moving, I become lethargic. My energy just gets depressed. I get into worse spaces mentally, and I don't feel like I can do whatever I'm focusing on as well. So it's in many ways just a natural need of mine to, like, we'll say, cultivate this energy, because I think that's really the contradict not it's not contradictory, but it's not obvious. It's not always evident result of exercise and working out or doing whatever you're doing with your body. It's, people think it's expending energy, and yes, it is. But for me, I always see it as allowing that energy to move and to become accessible, really. So I've always been a person who loves exploring solo activities from rock climbing, mountain biking, a lot of the adventure sports, skiing as well. But I've also, I do have an appreciation for team activities as well. I played a little bit of volleyball in high school. Never been a, huge sports person, but I have gotten into various other things. Like I did a little bit of Muay Thai, been really into working out in my own home space here, and that's how I actually keep my own how I keep it integrated into my life. Some people, the gym is for them because it gives them that place of focus and it gives them that routine. For me, I love having the accessibility of just being able to go out onto my back deck and pump out my routine, whatever that is that day.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think too, like you talk a little bit about the means of why you're moving. And I think it's really interesting, like bringing it back to your old farmers kind of like heritage and like upbringing, I'm going to come into is like you're cultivating that energy almost like you're tilling the topsoil of like what you're doing, right? Like you have to move that around so that like, if you just left it the same and you try and plant some sort of a crop or try and do something like that, you're not really going to get the most bang for your buck out of what you're doing, right? You've got to move that energy through space. You've got to have some days, are going to be awesome. Some days are not. But the fact that you're able to check the box, I think more so than anything, like it just keeps you mentally there. You get to have the win of moving around. And honestly, the selfishly, I'm at the point now where it's like I'm in there more for me and for the mental W than I am for the physical benefits of what's happening. And I feel like that's like a really unique space because I never thought that that would be the case. But I'm interested to know of like, do you feel that way? And then also to pivot, like how has the existential and astrology thing kind of played into that too?
Yeah, well, maybe I could get a little bit more understanding about what you mean by the mental W.
Yeah, so like imagine on a day, let's say for like a week, you decide that you're going to work out or train or whatever your kind of modality is. Maybe you're hiking, maybe you're mountain biking, whatever that is. Let's say that like you were initially going to go for like 3 or 4 days and then you like wake up and you're like, oh, I'm tired. And you decide to not go that day that you were planning to go or whatever your situation is. And then, fast forward to 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock that day. And then you're thinking back like, damn, I should have like went and did that. Or this is the contract I made for myself, or this was the thing that I set out to do, and then you fell short. And what I think that is, it's like it's setting that expectation and contract with yourself, almost like nobody else is gonna know, right? Like nobody else is tracking your movements or the things that you're doing and gonna say, hey, you didn't go to the gym on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday like you said you were going to, but and you're like holding yourself to that contract, holding yourself to that standard and that line, I think is something that can start to permeate into other facets of your life of doing things that are hard, being able to push yourself beyond, and then also knowing too, like it's not always about that. Like you could go, maybe for example, you had a long week and you're supposed to go move your body, and instead of you going to the gym, and today is Memorial Day by the way, so instead of going into the gym and doing a Memorial Day Murph, you decide to go for a 5 minute walk, and you're still checking the box, you're still getting the win, and you're still making that happen. And that's kind of what I think comes from that W. It's like having your standard and having that thing that really gets you to push past and holding that line, and then almost having that permeate into other facets of your life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very interesting you bring all this up because I've been really thinking about how much being disciplined with working out and getting into exercise and movement each day has helped me do exactly that. It translates to other areas of life for sure. I think there is something about that. that challenge, that difficulty, that resistance really turns into a great reward after a while. You know, it turns from a, when you initially start, can be a bit of a struggle, can be a bit of an uphill battle. And after a certain point, it's much more like, oh, this is just part of my day. This is part of my experience, and it brings me great fulfillment, um, brings me that hit of dopamine, whatever it is that that allows you to persist. And then, of course, you're gonna have days like you mentioned where it's like, man, I just ate too much yesterday. I really do not want to be here, but you still are, you know, it's like, okay, well, what can I do? What can I do that allows me to continue this pattern, to promote it? And one of the big things I've been into in the past year has been habits and building and breaking habits. And all the idea behind that, I really started with the book Atomic Habits. You might have heard of that one. I've definitely recommend it to people. But I was actually wrote down the other day a little list about the things that I have found to be critical with habits and habituation and building them. And really it's more than just habits, because I think eventually it becomes part of your life. It's not just like, oh, I, you know, something I include in my day. It's like it's integrated into part of your day, which is part of who you are. And the biggest thing I've noticed is that it's like anything else you do in your life. It's about, it's like growing a muscle. You know, you don't just start and walk up to the squat rack and put up, you know, 300 pounds, right? You know, it's, you start off with the bar, you get the form. And I think that people, when they're trying to get into the whole routine or skill of building habits, they start off way too strong. They start off way too heavy. Um, you know, start light. Start with the little things that are, you think are easy for you. That would be very approachable. Like, I'm going to say a word of gratitude before I leave the door each morning. You know, that just is an example. But something very simple, very approachable, because over time it becomes so much easier. And that's what I've noticed with myself is like, it's very easy for me now to just add something new into my day or into my week, whatever time scale we're looking at. And I think I attribute it to building this pathway within myself, whether it's mental, physiological. I think it's a combination. But it's pretty incredible, and it has that snowball effect. I've really noticed, and it's something I was not aware of. I always used to be very anti-habit. Like, I don't want to be constricted. I don't want to be like limited in this box. But honestly, it opens up my world so much. It gives my day a foundation, which I can feel great from. You know, I wake up, I do my breath work, I do my stretches, I do my meditation, go for a walk, and my day is primed and set to go. Um, and you know, from there, then I have freedom. Then I can choose, oh, okay, well, here's what I want to, what I'm really feeling inclined towards today, you know, really studying the subject, or um, researching this thing, or whatever it is, you know, it's a work day. I'm going to be doing some code. So yeah, I just have found so much inspiration and freedom from what I used to think was a real burden.
Yeah, it's funny that you talk about, Atomic Habits. I also think is a phenomenal book. And it's funny. I don't know. Have you read BJ Fogg's books at all? Tiny Habits. It's another good one if you haven't read that
No,
one.
I haven't.
Yeah, so he talks a lot, and I actually talk a lot with clients as well about not just finding like the big grandeur of a habit like you're talking about. Like, some people will come out the gate and they'll be working with us and they'll be like, "Oh, I want to work out 7 days a week. I want to, go full bore and learn about all about nutrition and all about, mobility and all these things." And it's great. We'll call it the January 1st effect. The January 1st effect is good for a month, maybe 6 weeks. And then, most of the time, by the time March, April, May roll around, you're right back to where you were at the end of the year before, trying to set New Year's resolutions. So BJ Fogg talks about, components of tiny habits and how you can break down something that's, seems so insurmountable to some really, really small thing that you can accomplish quickly. And the example is like, let's say you want to get better at push-ups or you can't do a push-up. Well, every single time you go to the bathroom or you're right about to wash your hands, you decide you're going to drop onto the floor and you'll hold a plank for 5 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever. And you just commit to a really small amount of time or a small action. And then over time, you know, you do that for XYZ amount of time, and then you're going to see the results of that down the line, and the compounding effect. And then some days you'll get down there and you'll be holding your plank for your 5 seconds, and you're like, oh man, I can do this for longer. And then you'll be down there for 10, and then 15, and then 20. But really, the line is, hey, I'm going to do 5 seconds. And it's funny, like you talk about a morning routine, and I want to get back to that and like hear a little bit more about yours because I have one as well. But my morning routine now, it was like, hey, before it has to be like I would read and journal and blah 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 and do all these things. And I've boiled it down to like I'm gonna write at least like one line in my journal, and I'm gonna read at least one page of a book in the morning and at night. And most of the time, that's like a really low bar, right? Like one line, like you do that in like 2 seconds, and then one line of reading as well, or excuse me, one page out of the book. But when you finish that, it feels good and you celebrate it. And then it starts to just like push you forward to do more and more and more. And you don't feel like that barrier for entry is so high and the bar is set so high to where you can't really make the result. And then you get kind of demoralized or, not as motivated from that. So um, I can totally agree and recommend you look into Tiny Habits too. BJ Fogg does a really good job with that. But I want to get back to your routine. You talked a lot or a very brief amount, but I feel like routine is something that's so important. And talk to me about your routine and how and why it's crafted the way it is and how it began and what kind of it's taken on over the past, however long, year and a half or whatever that you've been doing it.
Yeah, well, I will say it's definitely not as clean as it sounds. It's not a linear journey. It's definitely been a more of a roller coaster type journey. As most things are in life, and especially for this, because I came from a place of being having a very negative attitude towards it. So it's been something I've had to really build up. So my current morning routine, um, you know, this is a funny one, but I always like rinse my hair off. One, it helps me to refresh because I don't take a shower in the morning. But it also sets me right. Astrologically, water is a very important part of myself. So like it helps me to find like I don't know, a little bit of a center, interestingly enough. Um, Besides the normal stuff, hygiene, brushing teeth, whatnot, I go immediately into stretches. So I'll walk outside actually first thing, and you know, sort of get into the natural space. Nature is very important to me. And then depending on the weather, I'll work on my stretches. I have a constantly evolving little repertoire there, stretches and fascial maneuvers to really get things opened up. Then I get into some breath work, and that's been evolving as well. That's actually a more recent thing. Um, Specifically, right now, it's spinal breathing. That's to circulate energy, to really get things on a more subtle level moving in my body.
And what is that exactly? Like, talk to me about because I'm not sure, and I don't know whoever's listening will know what spinal breathing is, but I would love to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so it's a practice where you are moving energy. We'll call it you can call it sexual energy, chi, uh, shakti energy, whatever it is, from the base of your spine, from your root, up to your crown, the top of your head, or the third ventricle, whatever you'd like to call it, and then down through the front of your body. And then it's like a circuit, it's like a loop. Um, and then this is related to the cerebral spinal fluid and the movement of that. It's connected on a physical level as well, which people can look more into. Um, but the actual process is uh, a a wave almost. You're moving your hips and spine back, and then moving it forward as you're inhaling as you go back, and then exhaling as you go forward.
Almost like a cat cow esque type
Yeah, yeah.
movement. Yeah.
And except you're in a vertical position, you have your spine neutrally straight, you're sitting upright. So that's the basics of it, but it really you go through that 30 times, and then you inhale and hold, and then exhale and hold for 30 and 45 seconds respectively,
Yeah.
and do
Are
that
your
for
eyes open and are you like picturing? I'm like almost imagining, and this may be just because I'm naive, but I'm almost imagining like sitting down with my eyes closed and like picturing the breath almost like coming up my back and then up to my head and coming around. Like, what are you thinking about or
yeah, it's
visualizing, or is it anything at all?
Usually it depends. I think it's very powerful to have an intention with it. Having that visual component of, say, your breath moving up and moving through your body, I think can be very powerful in it. For me, it depends. Sometimes my mind is just blank and I'm just focused on my breath. Um, and sometimes I'm focused on a certain part of my body that, okay, I'm trying to release some tension here. But then I usually go into my meditation after, and that's where I just work on settling the mind, becoming the observer, all of the good stuff that's involved in meditation. And that, of course, is always evolving as well because there's many different forms, and I'm going through different stages of what's important to me within that practice.
Yeah. And I'm curious, like we've gone through, is that like the full morning routine? Does it end with the meditation?
I go for a walk then, and that
Okay.
that walk it's sort of like your morning journal. It's I at least have to step out the door.
Yeah. I'm
And
curious, like with that too, and I guess with all of them, like how do you know you're done? So like let's say like you wake up and you're putting water under your hair, or maybe it's during your stretching routine, or your breath work. And is there times where like you'll sit there for, I don't know, 2 minutes of meditation or breath work, and then other days where it's like 15 or 20? Or are you pretty strict with like, hey, I wake up at this time and this block of time from, I don't know, let's call you wake up at 5:30 and then you're maybe done around like 6 or so. You're pretty like scripted in the timelines.
yeah, it's less time for me. I can't say I've always. Time is I don't like being pushed by time. I like being moving with what feels right. So of course I have my general wake up time, but beyond that, it's more how's my morning going? And I have the luxury of working from home and working remotely, so I can do that. But it's for any given part of that routine, it really comes down to, well, I try to hit most of it, but like if things are feeling stagnant, I'm going to vary it up. I listen to my body, my intuition, whatever it may be. And if it's telling me, hey, not today, or do this in a different order, or do this in a different way, whatever the variation is, I try to be aware of that. And I think it helps when especially through the meditation, you're getting into that space to be receptive, to listen. I think our bodies have a whole lot to tell us that often goes you know, unrecognized. And if people would be, I mean, I'm still learning to listen, so I'm not by no means a guru, but it's oftentimes there's a lot of signs and symptoms that are occurring before the big breakdown or the big occurrence happens. Like someone has some sort of injury to their knee. Usually there's something going on, like a little tweaking, and there's signs. It's a whisper. It's like, hey, and then you get the slap in the face. It's like, hey, something's wrong here.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, like listening to the body and the signs as you're kind of progressing. I totally agree. I think like it's typically not just one thing. It's like the compounding effect of whether you're pushing through an injury or something like that, or not listening to your own intuition, which I think a lot of people need to do more of, just so that they're able to kind of stick with it. I got one more question for you, and then we can kind of move on from the morning routine stuff. But I'm curious, like, let's say you're somebody listening to this and you're like, hey, I want to start kind of a morning routine, kind of like David's. I think his is awesome. Like his things are there. Like, what's the piece of advice that you would give somebody like who wants to start with a morning routine, whether it's a big extravagant one like you have, or something smaller? What's some advice that you would give somebody who's listening?
Yeah, it's really what you said before. It's start small. Start quite simply. Pick one thing, and it doesn't even have to be the most critical thing. It might be something that you think is very doable. It might not be the end goal, but something that is very easy to do. And from there, everything can be built off of that. I think that's the most important thing. Like, Atomic Habits talks about habit stacking, and it's very easy once you have something as a basis, which you probably already do in your morning routine. You probably do something, whether you want it there or not, where you can, once I do this, then I just move into this. And then you don't have to start with a short amount of time or a short amount of repetitions of whatever it is. The whole thing is consistency and making sure that you show up. And then with time, you will naturally be inclined to do more just because it's like, oh, well, this is easy now. This is just natural. So you just add a little bit more to it. That's the biggest thing is not overdoing it from the beginning because you come to resent it.
Yeah, it shouldn't, and I totally agree. I feel like when I first started trying to do my morning routine, I like bit off a lot, and then for a long time it was like this isn't fun anymore, you know?
Yep.
And then after a while when I kind of dialed things back, I realized like, hey, this has now become like me time. It's become like the thing that kind of gives me energy and gives me kind of life and vitality. So I can totally relate with the things that you're saying.
Yeah,
Um,
it sets you right.
yeah, totally. Talk to me a little bit about the kind of the Astros. I'm like so interested in kind of understanding like what was the pull to this like whole thing. And just so that people know, like David's family was like big in agriculture from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, obviously,
Yep.
back over in Maryland. And I feel like, you talk about somebody whose family comes from agriculture and then somebody who gets into some astrological kind of like energy, chi, the like breath work types of things. It's like very, very different sides of the coin. So I'm really curious, like, what was the pull? How did you kind of get into it? And I would just kind of love to hear a little bit about the journey.
Yeah. Well, it's been a meandering one. It's one that I wouldn't have expected myself to show up into. If you asked me, especially back in high school, anytime, like really up before until maybe 2017. Um, but like most things, it starts with a personal need, like a personal reason. So, and for me, it was like things were off in my life. Things weren't in the place that I wanted them to be. Had, I wouldn't say issues, but I was overdoing it with alcohol was one thing. And for me, it was like, I got to get to the bottom of this. And so it really started with back in the day, Jordan Peterson. And I learned of Carl Jung and really dove into shadow work and getting to understand and know the sides of myself that maybe I rejected or were unpleasant or I thought were unpleasant. Um, and understand what they are, why I pushed them away. And getting really, it all comes down to getting to the root of things. I love digging into stuff, investigating, trying to understand the deeper mechanisms that lie below the surface. So depth psychology really was a door, and Carl Jung, was part scientist, psychologist, physician, part mystic, we'll say. And so you get into depth psychology, you get into archetypes, and you get into the larger forces that animate what many people know as gods, goddesses, forces of nature, the deeper aspects that all humans share. And so this is a very big point of my journey, and it really opened me up to a different perspective of the world and the universe that we live in, and also opened me more to the spiritual aspect of myself, um, understanding my connection with that, not just in an intellectual way, but in a very much a felt way. Um, and so, of course, at some point I just stumbled upon astrology, and it's what called to me. I was interested. I got a reading from a professional astrologer, and I was like, whoa, okay, there's way too much to just disregard here. There's too much coherence, accuracy, relevance to my own life, to things I knew about myself. And then it also showed me some things that instantly hit me, but I didn't know about myself. It's like, you hear a deep truth and you are struck, even though it's like, how would they know that? I don't know. But it was there. And that took me down the rabbit hole. I was just had to start looking into it for myself and start with my own chart, and eventually got to the place where I was, took some online learning. I've done a lot of reading, done a lot of studying. I've had a few, we'll call them unofficial mentors, people I listen to and follow. And I've just started giving readings myself and using it. And it's a tool. That's what it is. And it's a system and a tool and an art at the end of the day that bridges, I would say, the gap between the rational and the irrational. Like you can be a little bit of the artist, you can be a little bit of the scientist in a very loose term. Um, and have because it has a very strict system, but when you're dealing with symbols and um that realm, you're dealing with a broad spectrum where, you have to be open to your intuition. You have to be open to understanding the story of someone's life because it really is a story. We're not just segmented little units of like quanta coming together, and like we're not discrete. We are something much more continuous and evolving. And astrology really allows you to gain a deeper picture into that, into someone's soul, into someone's psyche, and it can help in so many different areas of life. And honestly, that's why I love it. It's forever fascinating, forever opening to other people, to the mystery of the universe, to the cosmos.
Man, that's incredibly interesting. I almost want to like, have you do like a live one on me right now, I don't know if
Yeah.
you have the tools and stuff available, but you know, it'd
Well, we
be
could look you up. It would take a second. I think that it might be best saved for another time just to be prepared.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I would be interested in doing it. Maybe we do it offline another time. But
Yeah.
yeah, that really, really interesting stuff that you're talking about. It's cool too because I feel like you have found in the way that you kind of talk about it, you found something that's deeply that makes you like incredibly passionate and kind of motivated. And I lost your screen just so you know. But like it seems like you found something that you like really find a lot of joy in, and it's something that helps you be connected and be with somebody else in like a really intimate way. I feel like that's a something that a lot of people are kind of looking to do, is find a connection with somebody where they can have a conversation and it's not just how's the weather, what is going on, like how are you, and it's not so I guess surface level, to where you can kind of really start to get to the nitty gritty and understand kind of the inner workings of how somebody ticks, what could potentially help them to have a better, happier, healthier life in general.
Yeah.
Um,
I can give a real quick exposition on how this can link in with health and fitness, because within each of us has what's called a natal chart, basically a map of when we were born. Most people think of astrology, they think of their sun sign. They think of oh, I'm a sun in Libra, I'm a sun in Cancer, etc. But there's a lot more to it. There's a whole map and diagram and navigational tool for each of us. And within this chart, there's an area of the chart that represents our health, our day-to-day life and activities. So things like habits, things like routines. And it's both physical, and there's a side for mental and spiritual health. And not only that, but there are different planets and bodies that represent things like our natural competitiveness, our natural vitality and energy and drive to like, do things, lift up heavy objects, put them down, compete in sports. We can get an understanding through the chart of all these things in a person. So for me, I have always been inclined towards independent activities. Rock climbing is very independent. You're up on there on the wall by yourself. Mountain biking, all of this stuff, and it shows up in my chart. It's not. It's very clear, and it helps me, even though it's like, oh yeah, of course that's just me. But if people are questioning, if people are unsure, like, yeah, I've always been one that tries to go to the gym, and they just can't get it to stick. It's not their thing. Well, we can look at what is their thing, what allows them to engage with their vitality, with their physicality, with their body to maintain their health. What challenges might come up regarding their health, regarding anything in that area, really. And how do we promote the positive aspects of all these things? Maybe that person isn't meant for being zoned in at the gym, uh, up, at the bench, whatever. They're meant to be playing a team sport and engaged with other people, and or something along those lines. Like it's going to be it shows the differentiation and uniqueness of each person.
Yeah, I feel like that's totally the case, man. Like I find that there's a lot of people that try to put the square peg in a round hole, you know. You're like you like are like, "Oh, the person that I love to hike." And then, let's say that there's somebody who comes and tries to work with us and they're like, "Oh, I want to like get fit and I want to do X, Y, or Z." When somebody looks at them and they're like, "Hey, oh, you need to go to the gym and you need to start lifting weights or you need to start doing X, Y, or Z because maybe that works for me or that worked for somebody else in the past." Well, that person's going to be like, I don't know if that's going to be really my thing. And then it doesn't stick. They're not living like their truth and they're not living to the values and the things that they enjoy. And then you end up right back to square one, I feel like, because you're trying to coach or push somebody in a direction that they're not ready for. And that's not to say that people don't need a little bit of discomfort sometimes
Absolutely.
when it comes to growing, but I definitely don't think that, taking somebody like you, for example, who likes to rock climb, who likes to do, mountain biking, outdoor activities, or whatever. I'm not going to be like, hey, David, I think it'd be a really good job for you to go to Gold's Gym and like do like 3 sets of 10 on the bench press. You're probably like, dude, that sounds like my nightmare. Like you're not going to want to do that. So I think it's cool that you've been able to like cultivate this tool and understanding to where you can link like multiple different like facets of somebody's, being and understanding to come together to form. And it could help you probably like formulate a plan. Like I'd love to hear, you don't have to give like people's names and stuff like in the readings or even kind of in your own interpretation. Like how has it helped you? What has changed in your life after or in the life of somebody that you've helped or chatted with when you've done one of these?
True. Well, it's hard to say as far as like the area of health and fitness.
It doesn't have to be confined to that either. It can totally be some sort of a purpose or just general like
Yeah. Well, okay. I was talking to someone who's pursuing their medical career, becoming a doctor. And you know, I was going over like the potentials of their chart, and I can't remember the details at that point, or at this point, but they came back to me later and they're like, yeah, after the reading, I really rethought really what I put my value into. Like, did they want to be in a hospital, intensely? They decided no, they wanted to work on the road, becoming a traveling doctor, a person who has a lot more freedom within their life. They didn't want to be constricted and have they wanted to have more facets to their life than just being a doctor, and they wanted to be able to live. So that's one very clear example. But so many times people will come and they'll come in for a reading and leave saying, wow, I feel really seen. That's part of it. It's being recognized both for the strengths and the challenges that a person faces. Many times, like I'll talk to someone who maybe is like in their 60s and they will have been through most of their life, and I'm like, yeah, I could see you being great at advertising. They're like, yeah, I was in advertising, I was in copywriting, that type of thing. And so they're already at a point where they've been there, done that. So of course it's not as relevant. They live their life in that way. They're retiring. But, it helps to show like, hey, when I do bring up stuff that you're unaware of, you know, there's already proof in the pudding, so to speak. Like, it's already there. Um, yeah, and like in so many ways, like it can help not only as in the external world, but also in the inner. Like, people feeling like they can be their true selves, understanding where certain aspects and patterns in themselves came from. Like, all of us have, well, not all, we all come from a mother and a father. So a lot of times, I will be able to see, well, oh, here's how the mother impacted you in the chart. Like, was your mother overly critical? Was she expecting a lot? Was she very supportive and nurturing? All of these potentials. And they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. And then we'll be able to go into, well, here's why, and here's how you can work at with it, and here's how might still show up in you, and you might be still playing out that pattern. So there's just so much. I won't, continue on, but that's there's a lot that you can get into with it.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of it comes down to like asking like pointed questions that get you to kind of understand what your values are. And then not only that, like have you do some internal work and reflection of like, hey, are these the values that I want to hold and why? And it's crazy that, somebody in the medical field was like going down this path of, working in some ER or maybe I don't know what form
Yeah.
of medicine, but then like going around and be like, this isn't for me. Like this isn't, I don't value this. I don't want to feel constricted to X, Y, or Z thing. And that's, something that I think takes like pointed questioning and sometimes guidance or something of that nature and just a ton of inner reflection to determine like where you kind of want to go. So it's really cool that you were able to I don't even want to say like help them because they probably did most of the work themselves, right? But you were just there to ask the right questions and kind of show them the way.
Yeah.
Um, which is like I think the best part of coaching in any capacity is like just showing somebody how powerful and true like they truly are and just helping them kind of realize that themselves is kind of the best thing that you could do.
Absolutely. That's definitely my position on it. I think that the best teachers are ones that can allow students to learn themselves, and same with coaches, same with mentors. Like they really allow that person to, it's not only just getting to the answer, it's becoming going through the process. And I mean, bringing it back to what we started in the beginning, it's part of being active, working out, having any sort of discipline as well in that manner. Like it is that process which develops character, I think, over time, and develops also a resilience, a belief in oneself, and really just all these very positive attributes that are developed through that resistance. Resistance training really also is resistance training for the mind, developing that strength of character and determination and drive. And I think
Yeah,
that's like many lessons in life. Being able to bring that out in someone is super important.
for sure. You have that resilience in one facet and you'll have it in others too.
Yeah.
Man, how cool. Dude, hey, this has been like super great. I almost want to like put a pin in your ear to be like, hey, we should do another one where we can do like a reading or something like that. And I don't know if we need to record it or not, but I think it'd be really interesting to put that on at some point. And I'll be a guinea pig for you to do that. And then, who knows, maybe we have some people in our program that are interested as well, and I can shoot them your contact information. But this has been really cool, man. I really want to thank you for coming on and give me, 45 minutes of your time tonight. It was really great to kind of reconnect. Do you have any like final last words for anybody who's, I don't know, struggling or wanting to, I don't know, any piece of advice that you'd want to leave anybody with here that's kind of listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think really it is start with the small things and prove it to yourself. I think that you can really show yourself more than you expect, more than you are capable of, and you don't have to start big. And be open to that. Be open to, well, maybe proving yourself wrong, because I think that oftentimes that can come from a place of self-doubt and unsurety, but we all have it in us, to be more than we thought.
Yeah, well said. Cool, David. This has been great, man.
Yeah,
I
well, thank you
appreciate
very
you for
much.
coming on. Yeah, of
I
course.
really have had a great time, and we will catch up after the show to figure out the reading.
Yeah, totally. For those of you guys that liked what you heard today, please drop us a like, share with a friend, and follow us for more. We'll be coming on again next week. We'll see you guys next time.